Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
And welcome back, everybody. She provides psychotherapy, but in a very different way to help people move past relationship issues, identity issues, career issues, transitions, anxiety, depression. The therapy is delivered with the connection through the arts, dance, movement, all of that. Today, we're going to look at that through the lens of couples therapy. Never even occurred to me that this can work for couples as well. And she is Deniz Oktay, and she's with Williamsburg Body Mind Therapy. Welcome back. How you doing?
Thank you so much. I'm good. Happy to be here. Yeah, I was just trying to think of something maybe we haven't talked about yet, and I was like, oh yeah, I work with couples, and it might be interesting to just explore a little bit about how dance therapy can be a great form of therapy, form of psychotherapy, working with couples.
So when a couple meets with you and it's
hmm
for a reason of therapy, whatever their issues are, or maybe actually, you know what, maybe we should look at some of those potential issues: communication, marriage, relationship, children. All of that can be worked on through that type of therapy.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, of course, there is a lot of talking, understanding kind of like what is the dynamic that all gets communicated, through a verbal process. Um, but then, the thing I love about it is when you're working with an individual, you're seeing the person sort of in their own intrapsychic, so to speak, uh, relationship, right? Relationship with themselves and then the stories and the narratives that they have about their relationship with others. But when you bring a couple in, all of a sudden you have an immediate dynamic between the two people, right? And between the couple and the relationship and what kind of issues arise in communication in terms of communication styles, stress response styles. Do people shut down? Or do they get
Hmm.
more aggressive and fight? Do you have one person in the relationship who tends to kind of disengage and become very almost numb? And then what does that do to the person who really needs validation or feedback or engagement and becomes more anxious than about the attachment, right? So all of these things can kind of be explored, and bringing it into the body and into an exploration of what's happening in the moment here, right? Because a lot of times in couples therapy, there will be arguments during a session, right? Or some sort of issue will present itself and it will arise right there in the here and now.
Hmm.
So we can stop, sort of pause on the content of what the issue is and go a little bit deeper and start to explore what's happening in each of your bodies right now, right? And like really taking the process into a creative exploration in that way.
This isn't for all couples, am I right?
Maybe not. Yeah. I mean, you have to be willing to
Hmm.
want to explore through a bit of a creative process and also through a physicality,
Sure.
right? A kinesthetic experience.
For some couples, I'm going to say it, especially men, getting them to therapy is a challenge in itself. And then taking it steps further where they might have to express themselves through a physical outlet might be even more challenging. So that's the only thing. Once that's done and the couple's on board, um, I could see breakthroughs here where things come, because what's therapy? It's what are you feeling, and that's expressed through the movement.
Right. Well, and actually I find with men actually that because I'm coming from an informed place about the body and the mind and the connection there, and I'm very comfortable in a nonverbal process.
Hmm.
And I'm not going to stereotype and say that all men are one way and all women are
Sure.
one way, but a lot of times I see men go more into a shutdown, like they can't access their emotions. even if they want to, even if they're aware, like, look, I am just not available right now. I want to be able to process this with you, but I just don't feel anything right now. And to even say that in a therapy space and to acknowledge, like, I don't feel anything, I'm sure there's a lot of feelings there, but I don't know how to get there. And then part of the process is helping their partner understand that process, right? But then also, can we work non-verbally? And sometimes it's actually freeing to know, like, you don't have to talk about this. We can go into some other form of exploration, at least initially. Yeah,
So I'm going to go deep here for a minute.
sure.
Is it reasonable to think that somebody, like you mentioned, a man, can't access those feelings because many times those feelings come from past traumas in somebody's life? Could be your childhood, something you experience, and that's kind of set the stage for the way you react to relationship challenges. And they just don't want to go back there, or they're not comfortable going back there, or they've closed the door and the door needs to be open to work through it.
Yes, 100%. And that's where I think some of the obstacle comes to the couples therapy. Because
Sure.
sometimes, you know, whichever partner, maybe it's one or both, really doesn't want to open that door and doesn't even believe that opening that door is going to help.
Right.
They have, it's like, this isn't going to help anything. No point in going there. I
Yeah.
don't need to go there and I don't
Yeah.
want to go there. Right.
Exactly.
So you can still do some work in the present, but that kind of like really, if there's some really deep patterned behavior, which is coming into the relationship and constantly affecting it, and you're not willing to open that door, yeah, it's going to be hard to do this work for sure. Yeah. Good
But
point.
I think it's reasonable for somebody not wanting to go there, and you I believe nailed it in somebody thinking, well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to feel that way, or the potential for feeling a certain way. I just even want to go there because it's not going to help. How is it possibly even going to help? They might not realize that the dots are connected between all of this. That being said, if somebody is not comfortable speaking deeply about it, would it come out with the movement?
Sometimes, depending on, the movement has to be really structured in a way that invites a feeling of welcoming and safety, right? It can't be something that they're completely uncomfortable with. So even if it's just using imagination, sometimes imagination can be really powerful in terms of like, what would it look like if you express this in a
Hmm.
gesture? What do you imagine might happen, right? And just from that can sort of like uh start the process of exploring what something might feel like, or what's the worst case scenario, right? Like what are you worried is going to happen if you start to feel?
Hmm. How how does that all look like? Let's let's look at a challenge a couple might have. Now, things were great in the beginning. 10 years go on. Communication issues. She needs this, he needs that. They're just, you know, kind of at a deadlock where they're just not communicating about it. Maybe he even just walks away. She wants to talk about it. I was like, I don't want to deal with this again. No, 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 no. Now they're before you and going through therapy. How would that work? How would that look?
Well, the first thing that I try to do is slow the process down. So if we're in a session and things are sort of like getting very heated, or it just feels like we're going around and around in a circle,
Sure.
um, getting people up and out of the chair and just starting to move in some way, swinging their arms around, taking a breath, feeling your feet, doing some grounding, that alone can start to just like settle each person in the relationship. It's kind of like that, count to 10. If
Mm,
you're feeling, walk away, count
yeah,
to
yeah,
10, and then come back and like, let's look at this again.
sure.
It can kind of like help create the process. So that's one way I would use movement right away. Just let's slow everything down. Let's see what happens when we go in movement. Then if if there's a willingness to kind of explore a little bit more, how like almost like shaping, like how close do you want to be together right now? Each person sort of like expressing just in terms of distance. You might find one person really wants intimacy and moves very close. The other person wants to feel physical touch, like a hug or some sort of communication non-verbally that says, "Hey, I love you no matter what. I'm upset, but I love you," right? Another person might hate the feeling of touch, right? And these are things, ironically, that sometimes don't get discussed in relationships. Sometimes
Mm.
people don't even realize they're adverse to something, and they just sort of shut down and sort of go along with it because they think it's the right thing to do, right? So I think helping each person realize like what's going to help you right now in terms of communication, and that can be done in very like sort of
Mm.
simple structures that use the body, use the movement, but so much can sort of come out from that that we can sit down and then talk about it.
What do you find when working with couples is kind of a common theme?
Um, Well, I really see these, I work a lot with the nervous system. That's sort of my interest. So I do see these kind of the cycles of getting stuck. Something happens, someone gets offended, someone gets upset, feels attacked, confronts their partner. Their partner then feels like, whoa, I don't like this. Maybe there's a big, explosive fight. One of the partners shuts down, says that's it. I like can't engage anymore. And then the anxious anxiety of the other partner can sort of like amp up. And then instead of just giving that person space and time to come back, right? The anxious person will keep like getting closer and like can't stop, almost like just you got to talk to me, like got to talk to me, like you did this, you did that, like we got to, this is wrong, you got to apologize, you got to understand me, like just keeps persisting. And then that further shuts the person down. And then so I see that a lot, that kind of cycle of a shutdown, and then it creates anxiety. And then instead of giving space for to come back together in the middle, there's kind of like a crossing over of boundaries, so to speak, psychic boundaries.
Do couples or people in general reevaluate their lives themselves consciously, subconsciously, every certain number of years, call it 5 years? And that's where the disconnect actually happens, where one is going in this direction, the other was going in that direction. Maybe in the beginning they were in the same direction.
Yeah, I think also sometimes people grow in uh different rhythms, right? So one person may do a lot of self growth and a self work and sort of start to um find different parts of themselves that weren't there in the beginning.
Mm.
And then that can threaten or create problems in the relationship if the other person is like, where's the person I married? This isn't, you're totally different than who I
Yep.
ever met before,
Yep.
and yeah, so for sure. Yeah.
Or it's that stuff that we talked about a moment ago from your past, for example, your childhood, where you didn't deal with those things. Maybe you didn't even know that they were an issue, but somehow that it's creeping back, and maybe you're realizing that your current partner is not working for you, but it's really you. It's really your I don't want to say
Your
problem, but
Well,
it's
your
your situation.
projection, right? In a way,
Mm.
right? I think I've learned that myself in my own therapy for years and years with my partner, um, realizing like, oh, wait a second, this really isn't about him. This is about me.
Mm.
Because actually, if I think about it, I had the same problem with a former partner that was totally different.
Right.
So like, who's the common denominator? I am, right? But that takes some kind of willingness to kind of like look at yourself and see like what am I bringing to this relationship? Could I be projecting? Is there something that my wife is doing that reminds me of my mother
Mm.
unconsciously? there's something that my husband is doing that reminds me of my father. Am I responding in a way that's like really unhealthy here? Like I have to understand this. So I stopped doing this. Um, I think
Mm,
also with couples, for me, I can say like from personal experience, my husband is from the Dominican Republic and I'm from the United States. So we have a lot of different like cultural uh
sure.
differences, and there's a lot of wonderful aspects about that that bring diversity to the relationship and so much about learning about each other's culture, but it can really get complicated, I
Um,
think.
I get you. I have many friends from the DR, including my work wife back in the day.
Uh-huh.
And that, digression here, but we went on a work trip to broadcast live from the DR a number of years ago, brought a bunch of winners with us. It was all a great time. And she wanted me to meet her family up in the hills. And I'm like, well, we're here for a very short time. I also want to smoke a cigar and pretend I'm on vacation at the same time. And then I learned that it was a 2.5 hour ride in the back of a truck up the mountain. And I'm like, I love you, but not this time. I just want to relax. We're working here and I want to relax. And that was the first time that we got into a tiff. And I was, very nice about it, but I was like, I just want to enjoy some time here. I don't want to be in the back of a chicken truck for, hours, about 5 back and forth. And can we FaceTime with them? All of that. But yeah, things surface along the way. You mentioned the parent relationship, and I truly believe the cliche term daddy issue, mommy issues is real. And I have a friend who got divorced in the last year and was very close to the family and all of that. And his ex abruptly said, I want to get divorced. And it was a shock to him, the family. Yeah, you always have a couple of things there in the back of your mind, like something's a little bit different. And he would tell me that. But then right away, boom. Turns out her father, when she was very young, up and left the family.
Mm,
Nobody knows why to the day. And she
mm,
was estranged from him when they got married. Her and her husband, my friend, she got back together with a father. Everything was great. Everything was wonderful. And then time went on. Uh, he got ill, then had cancer, and then passed away. 6 months after that, she deployed the divorce. The
mm,
end of the story here is the man she's with now. He showed me pictures, and I knew her father. It's the same person. If I showed you, you would say, wait a minute, was that him when he was a little bit younger? Same ethnic background, same affinity for certain hobbies, all of that. And it's almost as if she found dad again.
mm. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's almost, I don't want to say textbook, but it's like when you see the pictures and the full story there. Um, and it takes two in relationships. I get that, but I think that was resolved things unresolved from her childhood that kind of crept back in again. I don't know.
yeah, yeah. That's yeah, profound example, I think, of those kind of issues and the way they play out in relationships in a very unconscious way, right? Like
Right.
that's not it's only it's unconscious until it becomes conscious. But I think that's what the therapy space can sort of allow for, is like allowing for some of the behaviors to dig a little bit deeper and be like, what is there something going on here that's driving this behavior that might be good for me to know about, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
and unconscious, subconscious, I think that's the key because in his situation, I don't even think she realizes it. I don't even think she realizes this man looks like your father. I don't think it registers because he says, I try to tell her, but and it's over now. But I don't think she, what I call connect the dots or connected the dots to his abrupt departure, father's, all of that. Um, so that's why therapy is so important, where this stuff can come to the forefront, or maybe you can realize I realized things about my childhood. It's like, oh, that's why I do that. Oh, that's why I attract those kind of people. Oh, I happen to find women who have lots of anxiety. I'm like, why are they always showing up? Then I realized it. My mom had anxiety.
Hmm. Yeah. It's like the home away from home,
Mm,
right? It's like we're like we imagine that we want to feel a certain kind of way. But then what we do is we attract what we're familiar with because that's actually where we're really comfortable.
Right.
And the unknown is actually more uncomfortable. So, yeah.
Exactly. But
Hmm.
that's also things that don't really support you. And for me, I'm like the helper. I'm there for you. You know, get you over your anxiety, help you through certain situations, and all of that. Maybe I did that with my mom. I don't know. I look back to it. I don't want to do that. But now I'm mindful of it now. It's completely on my radar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing is those things can change,
Sure.
right? You can, I mean, yeah, I've seen it over and over again where the conscious becoming aware of it and being like, oh, wait a second, I don't want to be in this role anymore. I was in this role my whole life with my parents. I don't want to be in this role in my marriage too. So
Hmm.
like, let's work this out. I don't like that means I'm going to shift a little bit. What's that going to be like for you? And then it also gives some of the responsibility back to the other person and says like, I'm not going to be in this role, whatever it is. That means that now you have to also shift, right?
Right.
And then it gets really interesting. Well, what are they bringing to the table? Right. And so, yeah,
Hmm. Do
it's
you also offer non-movement therapy as well?
yes, I do. Well, I do the craniosacral therapy,
Okay.
although it doesn't really haven't figured out quite how to get that into the couples work. But one of the things I love doing with couples is the safe and sound protocol. So I think we talked about that a few sessions back, which is a music listening protocol and that engages the nervous system based on polyvagal theory and these stress responses that the nervous system enters into.
Hmm.
Now, if we take some of the time in session to do the music listening together, so the couple each has their own headphone, they're listening to the same music though.
Wow.
Um, Having that process and that co-regulation and that kind of like bottom-up experience in the therapeutic space can really get open up and help for something else to emerge, something else to change. It can just also make the process easier. Like I'm all about ease. I don't think if we can find an easy way to do this, let's do it,
A
because
100%.
life is too hard. So the safe and sound protocol is something I love using with couples and parents. So good with parents too, because when the parents, you have the couple dynamic, then you have the parental dynamic with the kids can bring a whole lot of, bumpy dynamics. So when the parents can like really calm themselves down, help their nervous system like be able to regulate themselves, then it also can help in parenting and how they're
Wow.
engaging with the kids.
For a couple, they're listening to the same music. Is it music that they're
Well,
listening?
yeah, I mean, there are different tracks. So let's say there's like a classical track, there's like a alternative music track. Like if they prefer different genres, they can listen to different genres. They don't have to be listening to the same music, but in terms of the progression through the protocol, they're listening at the same pace.
And this is music that is specifically designed for this.
Well, it's music that's specifically designed to engage the nervous system
Yeah.
through the ear. Yeah.
Wow.
It's
That's
yeah,
like really cool.
yeah, it is. It's a really cool intervention. Safe and sound protocol. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Because music is so powerful. I mean, of course, we have sound healing. That's taking it to another level. But why do we listen to music? Because we want to feel something, whether it's feel comfortable. So it's music that we grew up with, whether it's, music to pump us up, at the gym, whether I'm just in a bad mood, I just want to listen to a sad song.
Exactly. I need a song to
Whatever
help
it
me
is.
cry.
Yeah, whatever it is, it can be very impactful,
Hmm.
extremely, and just even I find it funny. I'll listen to different songs, and I'm all over the road. Like, I don't be in the car with me for more than 10 minutes because you'll drive you crazy because the music will change all the time. But a lot of times I'll hear the lyrics, but I'm not listening for the lyrics. But subconsciously, I really am.
Mm.
All we all are,
Hmm.
right?
Isn't that so funny when like years later you finally hear the lyric and you're like, oh my God, That means so much to me.
100%. Or I'll find a song and it could be some random, like you would hear it and you'd be like, why are you listening to that? And I don't know why I have to play it over and over and over. I believe there's a reason. It's resonating. The universe says you need to listen to this, and I'll get obsessed, and I'll put it on over and over again. And I mean, it could be the most simplest song, but there's something in the lyrics. And honestly, I'm doing it right now with something, and I haven't figured it out yet, but there's something there. I'll figure it out at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a Spotify playlist of just like my favorite I call them my breakthroughs. Like they have some sort of something that's like helps me break through in a way.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'll bet those playlists are private.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
I find when I've shared them with people, it hasn't gone well.
No, they don't get it.
No, because you want someone to really like be like, oh my gosh, and instead they're like, why are you listening to this? What does this mean? I don't like this song, and it's just like not helpful.
We shouldn't judge. And I'm listening to a track by Neil Young. Okay.
Love Neil Young.
Me too. And this is stuff that he released in the past, and he redid it. And an album that came out in October. And there's, one or two songs where it's like a church organ, because I looked it up on YouTube, and a harmonica and lyrics. That's it. And somebody else might hear it and say, what is that? Shut that off. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't know. It's the lyrics. There's something there. But it's very personal. But
very personal. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
How do we connect with you, Deniz? How do we find you?
Williamsburg, bodymindtherapy.com. So Williamsburg, bodymindtherapy.com. I'm in Brooklyn, New York, and you can find me there.
And you do virtual stuff as well, right?
I do. Yes.
Cool.
I do virtual stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
You do a lot. Learned a lot today. And it was great talking with you.
Great. Thank you. You too. Take care.
You too. Bye. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.